Everybody, it's Cast and Core TV, and it's your girl, Miss Public Info, here with the latest and greatest and sometimes hated updates of the most popular high profile cases going on around the country. Now, we're going to start talking about the RICO, right? And we're going to be talking about one rapper, Cash Out, from an Atlanta area rapper whose song you might remember. Well, it seems that Mr. Cash Out, otherwise known as John Michael Hakeem Gibson, took his stardom a little too far. And now, Gibson, his mother, Linda Smith, and his cousin, Tyrone, are all going to prison. It seems that they all were convicted under the RICO SEX trafficking, the same old one that tried to get old Diddy, but not on the federal level. This is on the state level, due to forcing women into prostitution and also RAPE. It seems that this was a 7-week trial, a 46 count indictment, and it was filed under very disturbing allegations. The jury is now talking, and the jury says that there was a lot to consider here, that there was a lot of disturbing detail. They say that the state had so much evidence. That's actually a direct quote for a juror. One of the jurors says, "We took copious notes. You may have seen a scribbling." She goes on to say that the state's evidence was so compelling and that they had so much of it. There was no sway. We were very careful. We went count by count, all 46 counts. So, what actually happened? Well, what's going on here is Gibson, he was convicted of RAPE and forcing women into prostitution. Smith, his mother, was convicted of allowing property in her name to be used for the use of prostitution. And the cousin was convicted of RAPE and raping a woman and forcing a woman into SEX work. Gibson and Taylor both received life sentences plus 70 years, and Smith, Gibson's mother, received a 30-year sentence. So to go from rapping to prison is tough, and also these mothers who are actually, going to prison along with their sons. We're going to talk about Sean Kingston and his mother next. It's really just crazy and unfortunate. At the sentencing, each defendant had an opportunity to speak, and Gibson had this to say: "The things I've been accused of, I know I haven't done those things." His mother, she said, "I take accountability. I pray for them continually." And the cousin says, "The victims who are accusing me, I didn't do it." Now, there were victim impact statements that were read, which is normal during these kinds of trials, including one from a woman who says that she was RAPE'd by both Gibson and his cousin Taylor. She went on to say, and quote, "The day these defendants chose to commit these crimes against me, they gave me a life sentence." And the juror that's talking said that that they expressed basically sorrow for everyone involved. They go on to say, "I'm so sad. I'm sad for the victims, and I'm sad for the defendants too." All three of these folks, Gibson, Taylor, and Gibson's mother, Cash Out's mother, were convicted under Georgia's RICO Act. So I talked to you guys about each state having a RICO Act. In Colorado, where I worked or served. It was called COCA because it was the Colorado um, Act. So those it was a Colorado like corruption act basically. So in Georgia, it's probably called something else. Apparently, it's called Georgia's RICO Act. It could be called something else for a nickname. But basically, every state has their own version of a RICO, and each state sort of has its own sort of specialized ramifications that sort of lay out the ingredients needed for a RICO in that particular state. So this is a little bit different than how the RICO Act is prosecuted or how it is layered federally, which is what we saw in the Sean Combs trial. But then this particular trial and the trial that I'm talking about in Colorado, these are both state cases, and each jurisdiction has their own way of sort of dealing with their state's RICO cases. So under Georgia law, it's probably similar federally about the 30 to life range, and the the judge rather had the option to sentence each of these people at a minimum of 30 and then max out to life, and decided to max out to life on both Cash Out and the cousin, and then limited the his mother to a minimum of 30 years. And listen, 30 years, this woman is, probably in her 60s or 50s, somewhere in there. That's life. And these young men here who are, I believe, in their 20s, maybe 30s, but I don't think so. I think they're in their 20s. This is it for them. That's it. That's life. Life plus 70 years to add on insult to injury. So it's a sad day. Now, the jurors said that they actually looked at a lot of evidence. They said they looked at jail calls, they looked at cell phone records, as well as surveillance footage. They said this gave them a clear picture of what actually went on, and it painted a clear picture that these individuals had indeed violated the RICO Act. Gonna go through here. Sorry about that. So they said that this had been going on for 7 years. They said that the prosecutor said that this particular crime was not pimping. And quote, the prosecutor, Arnell Winfrey, said, "This ain't just straight pimping. This is trafficking." He told jurors that Gibson, along with his mother, Linda Smith, and cousin Tyrone Taylor, ran what she described as a house of horrors. She said it was a house of horrors where women were, a house of horrors, horror, like horror show, where women were allegedly coerced, deceived, and forced into sex work. She argued that the case goes beyond traditional pimping and emphasized elements of force and coercion, which, again, even though each state has its own sort of recipe for what, constitutes as RICO, the RICO, wherever you go around the country, even state-wise, is still going to include an element. You have to have those elements of force, coercion, or fraud. She goes on to say that, sure, they were pimping for sure, but force and coercion is what makes this trafficking. Prosecutors presented evidence showing text messages between Gibson and his co-defendants coordinating the sale of women and how to collect payment. 8 cell phones were submitted into evidence revealing what the prosecution described as the inner workings of the alleged operation. And then during closing arguments, Gibson's defense countered that there was no evidence tying him tying his music career to the trafficking enterprise. They argued that the women were involved were not forced. And then Gibson's mother's defense team also claimed she was unaware of the trafficking activities. However, prosecutors pointed to payment receipts and property records, including a leased residence where some of the alleged victims were housed. Witnesses also testified that Smith was engaging in prostitution herself. So his mother was also um, prostituting. Um, she was doing it herself. This is sad. Um, it's not about the victim's actions in a SCX trafficking case, prosecutors told jurors. It's about what they did. So that there you have it, folks. That's what went down. Cash Out and his cousin have been sentenced to life in prison under the Georgia RICO Act, and his mother was sentenced to 30 years in prison under the Georgia RICO Act. She was also found to have been prostituting herself, and then allowing them to utilize things that were in her property, such as an apartment, residence, whatever, to utilize those things that were in her name to actually conduct the illegal practices. So that's where we are. Now on to mom and son team number 2, Sean Kingston. Now Sean Kingston and his mother, they are set to actually be sentenced in August. They're looking at an August sentencing. The mother is actually seeking a reduced sentence, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Let's talk about the brass tacks in the case. So Sean Kingston and his mother, Janice Turner, were convicted in March for fraud, essentially. They were convicted for orchestrating a fraudulent scheme to acquire luxury items. You guys may have heard about this probably last year or a few years ago, where Sean Kingston, had a warrant out for his arrest, he and his mother, based upon some sort of illegal practices that they were doing. I believe they're in Florida. And they had this scheme to acquire luxury goods and services by presenting bogus wire transfers, and falsified financial documents. Prosecutors say that they exploited Kingston's celebrity status to deceive vendors into believing he had the financial means to cover expensive purchases, thereby avoiding upfront payments. If they are convicted on all counts, they both could face up to 20 years apiece behind bars. And again, they're set for sentencing in August. Now, this whole thing started because Sean Kingston in 2023 was sued by Ariel Matos, claiming that he failed to pay for a high-end purchase. So the civil lawsuit, much like the Diddy trial, sparked a deeper investigation, and it culminated in a police raid on Kingston's Florida properties. The attorney who represents the vendor that sued Kingston described Kingston's alleged pattern of deception, and I'm going to give you a quote. In quote, he's got basically a script. He says he works with Justin Bieber and puts on a big show. This is a rental home not owned by him, and he uses his fame to persuade vendors to release items without payment, then simply never pays. Okay, now, more alleged victims after this sort of came forward during the trial phase of this, and painted a broader picture of financial manipulation. In the wake of their conviction, Sean Kingston shared a heartfelt message for his mother via social media. He said in quote, "My only queen forever, love you. I promise you this is not the end," followed by several broken heart emojis. And this, my source here is thesourcemagazine.com. And then she now back to the mother, because now she wants a lighter sentence, and she is saying that basically she would like to have a 30-month sentence. And she filed this on July 18th, so just last week. And sentencing guidelines suggested 63 to 78 months. So this is the Department of Probation who recommended 63 to 78 months. But her legal team has argued that the recommendation is excessive because of her age. Now, I don't know. Let's see how old she is. They said because of her age, her health issues, and limited criminal history. I believe she's somewhere in the late 50 range. But now her sentencing hearing is set for August 15th. This is after her request to be sentenced alongside her son was denied by the judge in their ongoing federal fraud case. So this is not a state case. This is different than the cash out case in that this is a Fed case. And then according to All Hip Hop, the U.S. District Judge David S. Leibowitz rejected Turner's petition to move her sentencing date to August 15th, the same day Kingston is scheduled to appear in court. But it seems, based upon what I'm reading here, that it was rejected, but it must have been at some point accepted. The request was accepted because her sentencing date is August 15th. So that at least she got that much, I guess, is how she should be looking at it. But yeah, we will be here with the sentencing for Sean Kingston when it comes through. Sean Kingston and his mother when it comes through. But that is simply outrageous that these two cases involve mother and son teams, rappers and mothers getting involved in illegal practices. Listen, guys, you shouldn't be trying to sort of walk out some sort of lifestyle you can't afford. And part of the problem is that a lot of these folks that we see out here on television, that we see out here in the music videos or whatever, a lot of what they have is borrowed. Trust me, as an entertainment publicist, I know many of these people in the limelight don't have money like that. Many of them are borrowing everything that they have. It's on loan for promotion or marketing purposes. And so, when you're no longer out with a hit record or whatever, then, there's pressure to sort of live up to that because, there's so much marketing out there on your name and this, that, and the third. But that doesn't mean, you do what Cash Out does and you go around, sort of utilizing women as objects and forcing them into trafficking. You don't do that. And then your mother certainly shouldn't get involved. I mean, they made this an entire sort of family affair, right? And then with Sean Kingston and his mother, you certainly don't go around frauding people financially. They knew what they were doing was wrong, but they probably just didn't think that it constituted to the level of which it rose, which was a federal fraud case. Like I said this during the Sean Combs trial, but it's worth saying again. It is so easy to violate the law, and it, especially as it relates to money and fraud, or as it relates to utilizing people in a way in which is self-serving. So, folks, you really need to be careful about that. People need to just really sort of stay in their lane. This is sort of off topic, but not. But we live in a society right now where everyone has this main character energy and everyone wants to be a celebrity and everyone is the star and this, that, and the third. Well, it's okay to be the star of your own show. It's okay to be a celebrity of your own show. But when you start to utilize other people to make your show happen, then that's a problem. And then we need to start looking at you as being potentially a criminal. Okay? All right, guys, we're going to be back shortly with another episode where we're going to be talking about that very very volatile and media. It's the media, the situation that's running the media circuit right now. Situation with the young man that was accosted by the police in his vehicle. So stay tuned for that. And we'll be right back with you with episode 47. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Cast and Course taking a break, and we'll be back soon. Thanks. Adjourn for now.